Hi. So I thought it's about time that I did an actual review on this phone, since I did say in my unboxing video that I was going to do one within a few weeks. However, a few things got in the road with that. One was working out how to actually use a few features on this thing. While at the core of it, it is just a standard Android mobile phone. There are a few things in relation to the touch buttons or the keypad that I couldn't quite work out, which I'm now fluent with it, so it kind of makes sense that since I've been using for so long, that now is a good time to actually run and do the review. So firstly, what I like about it. Pretty much the form factor is the biggest thing that I like about this thing. The being able to just pick it up off a desk and answer your phone calls is awesome. And being able to close it to hang up without fumbling for buttons or on-screen keys or anything like that. Now that's cool. It makes using it as a phone a really good experience. This thing holds signal like nothing. It's one. I'm on the Optus network in Australia, and this thing holds a 3G signal, where a lot of other phones, including the HTC One M7, the Samsung Galaxy S4 Mini, and a few other phones, actually throw back from 3G down to GSM, which is fine, except that next year Optus and a few other, well, all of the telcos are closing their GSM network next year, so a lot of those phones will no longer be able to fall back to GSM for basic voice coverage. It's just not going to work. But this thing actually holds a very good 3G signal. Had no issues with in relation to that. It does change between towers quite happily. It maintains a relatively strong signal even in patchy areas, and it's still got the ability to fall over to 4G if that's what you want. I tend not to use my phone in 4G. I find phones that are using 4G for their network most of the time, if the signal gets a little bit funny, the handover between 4G and 3G doesn't happen soon enough before the audio quality degrades or you start getting glitching. I find battery life holds a lot better on 3G than what 4G does, and even on 3G the data speeds are pretty good. Obviously a lot of this is dependent on the network and the provision that they've got in the towers and all that sort of thing. What I don't like, the battery life. Sadly, the battery life on this thing, even in moderate use, you are looking at recharging it at the end of the day, if you wish to make it through the next day without using the energy saving mode, which is activated through this little switch here. One of the other things is OS support through the manufacturer really isn't there. Maybe it's because I've got it in a different country to where this thing was released. But when you do the software update check, it comes back no updates are available, which means this model is actually stuck at this point in time on 4.4.4, where all the cool features are starting to come out on at least Android 5. And it would be really good to get this thing up to Android 5.0 at least, just to get the benefits with things like CarPlay, app support, and a few other things. Now there are a few quirks that I've found. Using the touchpad, it took me a long time to get the hang of using T9. I was never a fan of T9 back in the candy bar phone days, but I've actually gotten the hang of it on this thing. What I found is, depending on where you are, I found that using the hash key changes what typing mode it goes through. See, if I change that to, I can go to numbers, so it just types in numbers. I can go ABC, which is basically your multi-tap. So you multi-tap all your letters, you enter and everything's here. I'll work that out. Say if I wanted to type hello here, it's just a case of pressing multiple keys until you get your word, or you do have your predictive text down here as well, which also works quite well. If I come down the line and I change that to T9, typing hello is just a case of pressing each letter based on the numbers once, and it works that way. And then you've got you get a choice of words, which one you want to choose, and all that sort of thing, and that works quite well. There are a couple of things that get in the road with this. eBay, for instance, doing a search on eBay, you can't use T9. So anything you search for, you have to type in manually. So if I wanted to look up a Galaxy mobile phone, I have to do the multi-tap thing. The other thing is when the black cursor, I don't know if it's seeable there, but when the black cursor up here is highlighting the next letter, say if I want to type in treehouse, T-R-E-E, if I hit space too early, it inserts the space before the next letter, even though the space came in afterwards. It's kind of its automatic make it happen thing. That gets annoying with things like eBay. If you bring up the web browser, typing in web addresses, if I want to look up Brisbane, I can type it directly in and then do a search for it, and that's fine. But now if I go to the Google search box, this happens with any HTTPS website. Any text entry points in these HTTPS sites always default back to multi-tap, and there's no way of cancelling that. There's no way of getting around it. You can only choose between multi-tap or numbers, and that's pretty much your lot. The camera. It's a good camera. It does take high resolution shots quite happily. However, I find it's a little bit slow at focusing, which seems to be a case with a lot of phones. It doesn't focus anywhere near as quick as, say, something with an active focus like an Xperia Z or a Samsung Galaxy S4, S5, whatever. The focus speed is a little bit slower, though you can tap the center of the screen to get a new focus point, and it will follow you with that. The backlight works well. It is a bit obscure when you are using the camera. In that when you're holding it, what you're seeing here is actually here, because the camera module's on this bit, so you can actually close the unit up and then use it that way, and then you get your standard run of affair and all that jazz. In storage, it does show that there is an SD card in this phone. However, it's not a user accessible one. It's actually built either onto the board or it's inserted into a micro SD slot inside the casing, which you cannot access. When you connect this up to a computer to do file transfers, you do have the phone memory and the SD card memory show up. That's fine. But yeah, it's not a user replaceable part, and it means basically if you're not backing up your data and your phone's destroyed or lost or damaged or whatever, you can't just pull the card out of the phone and hook it up to a machine to copy your stuff off. It's not going to work that way. It is integrated into the device. Now, I've had a couple of questions on the original YouTube video, which I'll go through just quickly. The phone's outright through, well, basically it's an outright phone through China. That's where the phone was released. I've had a couple of mentions whether it was from Verizon or T-Mobile or whatnot. No, it was an outright phone pretty much. They had to, with this phone, to get the Google Play services on before I received it. They had to do the rooting, which allowed access to the file system to install third-party APKs, one of which was the Google Play Store, which then allowed you to install the Google services and that sort of thing. The phone is 100% unlocked. It'll work with any carrier that supports its frequencies. 3G, it's 850, 900, I believe it's 1700 and 2100 megahertz. So if your mobile phone provider supports those 3G frequencies, you'll be fine. It will run on GSM in the full range. Again, 900, 2100, and I'm not sure the two in the middle. It depends on what region I guess the phone was sold in. But yeah, it has 900 megahertz and 1800 megahertz GSM support, which means it'll work in all European, and Australia and New Zealand quite happily. It should work in the US where GSM's available. It also supports basic 4G. I'm not sure of the frequencies on that, I'm afraid. The phone does not support CDMA networks, or your standard CDMA networks with ESNs. This one is SIM card based. It's actually a dual SIM card capable phone, even though I'm only using one. We don't really run two SIM cards a lot in Australia because our network, the way our networks are set up, it kind of doesn't make sense. And I'm not sure if the dual SIM card relies on GSM working for the second card or not, which if it does, it's going to be pointless in Australia next year. And no, I can't send you one. But otherwise, I mean, it is a good phone. It's a little bit heavy in your pocket. It's a solid piece of equipment, pretty much. Compared to the likes of, if you think size-wise, compared to the likes of an S4 Mini, it's heavier. It's also somewhat thicker because there is two parts to it. Battery life could be better. Camera could be a little bit better. I wish there were software updates for it. It'd be a lot more useful if there were software updates available for this thing. I mean, there is a new version of this, which is the V800, which comes out stock with Android 5.0. The hardware between the two isn't that great, so it should be possible to transfer the OS between one and the other if, say, the XDA developers or someone got behind it. Your downside is the phone's not popular enough outside of China for there to be a lot of third-party development for this thing. Compared to the Freetel doesn't have as good a screen as this. This is if I remember correctly, it's a 1280 by 768 display, where the Freetel's an 800 by 480 or 1024 by 600. I think it's a 1024 by 600. Compared to the new Samsung W2017 or 2016, the new one that they just released. It's hard to say that the new Samsung's got the Snapdragon processor in it, where this has got a MediaTek. Whether that makes a lot of difference, I'm not sure. One thing with the MediaTeks I've noticed is there is a little bug in how they work. Sometimes when you put the phone to sleep, the capacitive buttons, the backlighting behind them will stay on. I had that with two Sonys which were MediaTek based, and I've had it with this one. So it's not an anomaly as such, it seems to be with that particular type of processor. So yeah, just to conclude, it's a good phone. It's not a high spec phone. It doesn't have, you know, the processor speed on this thing is 1.2 to 1.5 gigahertz. I believe it's a quad core phone. But it's got plenty of system memory. I don't get slowdowns on it with the usage I do, which is pretty much phone usage, maps, which work quite well, internet, just browsing and things like that. I don't really get into the app side of things. Because it doesn't have, like the new iPhone, because it doesn't have a dedicated headphone socket, I find I do tend to use Bluetooth a lot with this. And one thing I have noticed with it is the Bluetooth timing between this and one or two of my dongles. It can get a little bit glitchy with timing, so you do get the occasional audio stutter where the two haven't met up between the encoding of the signal on here and the decoding at the other end. I wish this thing had 3.5mm. I found a lot that with all my phones that instead of using Bluetooth speakers, I actually prefer to use the 3.5mm connection straight into the speakers and then power up the speakers through either a power bank or a power brick or something like that. Yeah, to get audio out from this to a set of speakers, you've either got to have this feed out to a Bluetooth receiver, and then have the Bluetooth receiver have the 3.5mm connection to your speakers, which means basically powering up 2 separate devices, or 3 if you include the phone, or you use the adapter that comes with this, which is a micro USB to 3.5mm connection. Problem with that is you can't charge the phone and use it use the output at the same time. There's no pass-through sort of thing. Otherwise, yeah, it's a pretty good phone, but it does have its limitations, and it's expensive, unfortunately. But it's a one of a kind in this country at the moment. Thanks for watching.